Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. It is day 2 of the AFN Special Chiefs Assembly in Calgary. And Chiefs have still yet to vote on a $47.8 billion draft final settlement agreement on long-term child welfare reform. APTN's Fraser Needham is there and joins us now. Thanks for being with us, Fraser. Can you tell me where things are at and when this vote might happen?
Well, things are actually rolling along. I mean, as I talked about on the noon show, there was quite a bit of delays. The agenda was amended this morning, but they're now sticking to the agenda, and they've started the discussion on the resolutions, which means they're getting fairly close to a vote. I think they're going to take about a half hour to do that, and then they can move toward a vote. This follows a sort of speech by former National Chief Phil Fontaine, who sort of outlined his reasons why Chiefs should support the vote. He mentioned something along the lines of Kelowna Court Plus. We all remember that, the previous Martin government. It went up in flames, of course, when the Harper government was elected. But I think what he was saying is that, again, sort of the same things that Chief Woodhouse-Neepanak has said, is this is just a building block. We should get this and then move forward on to other things, and that the agreement can be, of course, expanded.
Fraser, there's been a lot of discussion both for and against the final settlement agreement today. Anything in particular that stands out for you?
Well, we heard from the class action litigants this morning. These are some of the people that have been, battled under a separate thing, which is this compensation agreement that has been going on. They've been battling since 2006, and we know that there was the CHRT, orders, and that was, settled finally in federal court. I think it was late last year. And I think it really brought, these are people that either they themselves are victims of the, this discriminatory system, child welfare system, or their kids were. And certainly Carolyn Buffalo is one that fits into that. We've talked to her a number of times, and her son Noah has been really discriminated by the system. And it was a very emotional speech, and I think brought home that these are the people that have been really affected by all this, as politicians on all sides have argued over this, over these things, these issues. And I'm asking you to now, if you have it there, to play this clip from Carolyn Buffalo that kind of shows what I was talking about.
Okay, I want to make that abundantly clear. I'm not here to boost the AFN. I'm from Alberta. We don't even have a regional chief. I mean, that's our politics. I'm not a supporter of the Liberal government. Do I trust the AFN? No. Do I trust the Liberal government? No. But I am a supporter of this legal process.
Fraser, lots of emotional speeches there today. We're going to have to leave it there, but looking forward to what unfolds here in the coming hours. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, as you've heard, a vote on any of the resolutions has yet to take place, which may come as no surprise to many who have been paying close attention to this special assembly and the months leading up to it. You can bet our Truth and Politics panel has been paying close attention. They're joining us live now. Jennifer Lewitz is a partner with Pasqua Harbor Strategies, and she is there on the floor at the AFN Special Assembly. And Nigan Sinclair is a columnist for the Winnipeg Free Press and is joining us here in Winnipeg. Nigan, Jennifer, I think we're just getting you mic'd up there now, so maybe we can start with Nigan. And Nigan, this seems like a pretty divided assembly. What's your take on what we've been seeing and hearing so far?
Well, I was in Calgary yesterday, witnessing the kind of acrimony and deep conflict over this issue. On one level, you appreciate the passion. You appreciate the ways in which people deeply care about this issue, deeply care about getting it right. Also deeply care about the fact that the AFN is in fact running out of time when it comes to dealing with this government. Justin Trudeau's government is, by all accounts, heading towards the end of its time, and it may be that either another Liberal leader or a Conservative leader might not live up to the fulfillment of this agreement. But at the same time, if Cindy Blackstock has deep concerns, if the person who initiated this whole process says that there's gaps, that there's too much money that the AFN will be taking, it certainly is reason to pause. And I think that there is enough acrimony to suggest that this just simply can't be decided upon in this very short meeting in Calgary.
Jennifer, you're there right now on the floor as this is still being debated. What are your takeaways so far?
Exactly what Nigon said. There's a lot of divide in this room right now. You know, I've been speaking with leadership across the country for the last 2 days. The number one question I've been asking is, what are you feeling with all of this? And I just talked to Chief Roger Redmond from Standing Buffalo Dakota Nation. They're the nation that just received the federal apology. And, you know, he outlined some pretty steep concerns. You know, the lack of consultation, you know, more inclusivity when it comes to the negotiations. And we're like, these are leaders that are, you know, pro-sovereignty, are very big advocates for the people on their nation. And it's very, very concerning when these are the first leadership to speak up and say, you know what, this doesn't feel right. And the fact that it's as rushed as it is also doesn't feel good. And we've seen the narrative almost shift in the last 24 hours to now be more, well, you need to pass this through because the government's about to change. Since when do we make decisions on what is best for the government? And why is our AFN national body essentially not able to work with all governments in power?
Gonna come back to that point, Jen. Nigon, though, what's your sense of what's going to happen here? We're finally getting to the resolutions here, delayed, that's fine. But do you think anything's gonna pass here?
Well, it's been all hands on deck. Certainly, we've seen the national chief, anyone who's been watching, and I've been watching the coverage all day, this was expected by many circles within the AFN, I think, to go a lot easier and certainly a lot more earlier than the time in which we're looking at possibly a vote. If there is a vote, and I think there is a question if there's if rather than when, it might just be that this resolution really has to face much more scrutiny, much more issues or comments on amendments. I mean, when I say all hands on deck, they even pulled Phil Fontaine, who talked about the long experience that he had with negotiating the settlement agreement, which was also with a dying government as well. The reality is that this shouldn't be a pressure issue. This shouldn't be an issue in which the federal government is dictating to get this done simply because they're losing support. This should be about First Nations making the determinations, and this isn't just an issue of making a decision on this particular agreement. This is actually sort of a discussion on the relevancy of the AFN as a body in which to represent First Nations communities, which are going to, in the end, impact citizens. The AFN is not a government, and so what it is a representative body of chiefs. Maybe it should just be that the communities themselves should be negotiating this, and that's what I think really is at the center of this issue.
Jennifer, you touched on it earlier, and we've been hearing a lot about it the last 2 days. The talk about needing to pass this deal before the Liberal government falls, which seems inevitable at this point. Is there a need to be concerned about this deal should the government fall and the Conservatives take power? Oh, sorry, Jennifer, can't hear us. Nigon, I'll throw it back to you then. Should there be concern, as we've been hearing, that this deal may not be there if the Liberals fall and the Conservatives take power?
Well, this is certainly the argument that's being put forward, not just by National Chief Woodhouse, but by even Phil Fontaine, former National Chief, three-term National Chief. That's the argument that's being put out, and also by regional chiefs like from Saskatchewan, for example, where the real question is should you be following the terms of the very body that you have been combating in court at the Human Rights Tribunal for such a long period of time? Should you allow the body that you are negotiating with to dictate the terms in which you are accepting this agreement? I think there is a simple solution. Push this forward into more discussions going into the winter time. And there is another AFN meeting coming up, and it's not that far away. It's certainly before there's a potential election. Of course, any time the Canadian federal government could fall now that the Supply Confidence Agreement is over. But the reality is that I think that you just have to look at this agreement much deeper. And certainly if Cindy Blackstock and the Caring Society, the body that started this, is going to continue to rally support against it, you're going to see that increase.
Jennifer, just quickly back to you. What happens if there is no decision here in Calgary on this deal?
You know what? There's been a lot of conversation around what is going to happen next, and the last 24 hours, it feels like we've really been focused on this vote. Okay, this vote is going to take place, but what happens from there? There's a lot of concerns around this settlement. There's a lot of concerns around the negotiation and the lack of proper relationship, essentially between the nations across Canada and the AFN. And I just heard moments ago that there's people that are becoming proxies for nations because some of the nations aren't here to vote on it, who really at the end of the day shouldn't even be in this space and a part of this ecosystem, because these are people that have made entire business models off of child welfare services to essentially fund their businesses, and these are the people voting on incredibly important decisions. There's a lot of concerning narratives around this room right now, and at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's not about the Chiefs, it's not about anything other than the kids, and those kids that are in care or have been in care should be at the forefront of all of these decisions.
Jennifer Degon, we'll have to leave it there. We'll all be watching. Thanks for being with us.
Got me, Rich. Thanks so much.
Much more to get to here tonight, including a look at the controversial leader of the BC Conservative Party. Stick around. Welcome back. The election race is heating up in British Columbia. And APTN's Tina House had a chance to speak with Provincial Conservative Party leader John Rustad in Chilliwack about his recent announcement to repeal the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples if he's elected. Here's part of that conversation now.
With just 2 days left until British Columbians head to the polls to choose their next government, we caught up to Conservative Party leader John Rustad at a campaign stop here in Chilliwack, BC. We got a chance to ask him about his plans to repeal UNDRIP.
So the DRIPA legislation that we have today is actually, I'm fear that it's creating friction between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, and I don't want to see that. Reconciliation needs to be how everybody can come together and make sure that we prosper, together, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike. And so that's why we need to remove the DRIPA legislation. We're going to keep UNDRIP though, and use it, in the spirit that it was intended, as to how we work and respect First Nations in British Columbia.
Rustad also addressed the many concerns that Indigenous leaders like Grand Chief Stuart Phillip has about what that means to the agreements already signed if they are elected and repeal UNDRIP.
We've made amazing progress, and it speaks to reconciliation with our friends and neighbors and other entities throughout the province, forest companies, mining companies, and so on and so forth. So it speaks to harmonizing the management of the lands, and Rustad wants to come along and rip it up.
When I look at what DRIP is doing, it's creating a great relationship between government and First Nation leaders. It's not filtering down to the people on the ground, and that is what I'm most concerned at.
We also had a chance to ask Mr. Rustad about his plan to offer 20% of forestry lands to First Nations here in British Columbia.
So what we're looking at doing is First Nations should be able to fully participate in the resources off their land. That's exactly what the courts have said. That's also what UNDRIP has said. Is we want to make sure that that opportunity, which is why we want to put volume in First Nations hands that are within their territory.
And if they get elected, the BC Conservatives say keeping families together is their priority.
It is long past time that we need to stop taking children from First Nations. We want to work with them and empower them, support them to be able to provide their own services. Enough of the 60 scoop that is just carried on. So we want to be able to work and support nations to be able to do that.
Advanced polling is now closed, but the election is Saturday, October the 19th, where British Columbians get to have a say in their next government. Tina House, APTN National News, Chilliwack.
Federal politics now, and the federal minister for Northern Affairs, Dan Vandal, has announced he will not be seeking re-election in the upcoming federal election. In his statement today, Vandal puts his support behind Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and says he is most proud of achieving the Nunavut devolution agreement, said to be the largest land transfer in Canadian history. Vandal was elected MP for St. Boniface, St. Vital in 2015 when the Liberals won a majority government against the Conservatives. For almost 30 years, Vandal has been an elected politician, first becoming a Winnipeg City Councillor for St. Boniface in 1995. Vandal, who is Métis from Manitoba, is one of 4 Liberal cabinet ministers who announced today they won't run for re-election. A residential school survivors group in Sault Ste. Marie is hosting a gathering to promote wellness, healing, and community building. The Children of Shingwak Alumni Association's Wellness Summit covered a variety of topics, one of which is the ongoing impact of substance abuse. APTN's Mike McDonald has more.
The Wellness Summit gave residential school survivors, their families, and communities a chance to reflect, connect with others, and to heal. The ongoing opioid crisis was a topic of discussion, with the Opioid Research Communications and Project Liaison for the Chiefs of Ontario giving a talk on the subject. Sasha Bragg says a common concern is inadequate care for recovering addicts.
One of the main things that was mentioned is aftercare. So, people go to treatment and then they're put right back in the same situation. And a lot of communities don't have aftercare. So yeah, that's a huge barrier that we're facing in communities.
Bragg says there's often a double stigma to contend with.
And not only are you addicted to substances, but you're also Indigenous as well. It's the care, substandard care for sure. Not only that, but a lot of our communities don't even have access to some of these opioid agonist therapies or naloxone even. So just making sure that everybody has access to these is not just First Nations, but everybody.
Another speaker at the summit was Anne Seymour, an associate professor at McGill University. She's been looking into the long-term impacts of colonization.
It's not what's wrong with the person, but what has happened to the person. When I talk about what has happened to the person, I'm thinking about colonization and looking at the impacts. We're not a trauma. We are who we are. As I'm a proud Ojibwe person, and I recognize that through my own healing, that my children and generations to come will be well. So we're moving from intergenerational trauma to intergenerational healing.
Seymour's talk also focused on embracing the land to promote wellness.
We need to return to our teachings and return to the land. And when we return to the land and engage in our identity, it helps with our cultural identity when we engage our cultural practices and our language.
The summit was hosted by the Shingwak Kinumagega Anishinaabe Education Institute. It included workshops on traditional medicines, cultural activities such as beading, and presentations from support services providers. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Sault Ste. Marie.
Thanks, Mike. Time for one last quick break. Still to come, we'll head back to the AFN in Calgary, where Fraser will tee up tonight's episode of Nation to Nation. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And Greg Scriver shares this view from Mirror-Bluet Bog, just east of Ottawa, Ontario. Thanks, as always, Greg, for sharing. If you have a photo you'd like to share, send it to APTN or share at aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, sun's out and 13 for Fredericton and Halifax. 6 in Kuujjuaq, sunny and 5 in Nain. Sunny and 15 in Montreal, sun's out and 17 in Val-d'Or. 18 under sunny skies in Sault Ste. Marie, sunny and 17 in North Bay. 18 and sunny in Thunder Bay, showers and 14 in Sioux Lookout. 13 in God's Lake and Norway House, 8 in Thompson. Showers and 12 in Winnipeg, sunny and 12 in Dauphin. Sun's out and 12 in Regina, 11 and sunny in North Battleford. 10 under sunny skies in Meadow Lake, 8 in Buffalo Narrows. Over in northern Alberta, 4 in High Level, 2 in Fort Chipewyan. 11 in Edmonton, 10 in Calgary. Showers in 11 for Vancouver and Victoria. Rain in 10 in Kamloops. 6 with showers in Prince George. 9 in Smithers. Minus 14 in Old Crow. Flurries and 6 below in Whitehorse. 2 below in Yellowknife. Minus 6 in Norman Wells. Snow and minus 5 in Sax Harbor. Flurries and 1 below in Pawlatuck. 5 in Chesterfield, Whale Cove and Arviette. Minus 3 with snow in Resolute. Flurries and 2 in Joe Haven. Time to head back to Calgary now, where Fraser Needham is standing by again with a look at tonight's Nation to Nation.
Hello, I'm Fraser Needham, and I'm coming to you from the floor of the AFN Special Chiefs Assembly in Calgary, where chiefs are being asked to decide on the future of a $47.8 billion settlement agreement with the federal government that will pump much-needed cash into First Nations child and family services. Last week, the Chiefs of Ontario ratified the deal, and I'll speak to AFN Regional Chief Abram Benedict on why they did that. I'll also speak to Chief Joe Alphonse about why the Chilcotin Nation in British Columbia asked chiefs to reject it. And where's Cindy Blackstock in all of this? The longtime children's advocate speaks her mind on the settlement. All this coming up after the news on Nation to Nation.
Thanks, Fraser. APTN Investigates returns this week with an all-new episode. In Time Immemorial, video journalist Tom Fenario shines a light on the Algonquin people's battle to stop a nuclear waste facility from being built on their ancestral territory. Here's a preview.
There's a point where the Ottawa River widens to make way for a series of islands. There's a small one hugging the rapids that's long been used by the Algonquin Anishinaabe. Officially, it's known as Fitzpatrick Island, but today it's being renamed Minimadone Namatik. In Anishinaabemowin, it means Spirit Island.
The spirit speaks to you. Everything has a spirit, no matter what it is.
After colonialism, a fur trade war, residential schools, the Algonquin receded from parts of the Ottawa River. But it was never abandoned.
The Anishinaabes, they were always here before. It was time immemorial, and we lived here. Our ancestors lived here.
So it's consequential when the Algonquin Nation begins to reclaim guardianship of the sacred waterway.
I think about the water, I think about the animals, I think about future generations and what they're going to be left with.
But this river has another legacy, one that also has no intention of going anywhere. Nuclear power, a source for low-emission energy, except that the half-life of even its least potent waste is 15 generations.
You do not put nuclear waste on a freshwater river. I don't understand the reasoning behind that.
It's enough to give anyone pause, and in the future could give a whole new meaning to the phrase, time immemorial.
You can catch APTN Investigates Time Immemorial airing this Saturday on APTN. And you can catch Nation to Nation right here in less than 2 minutes' time. You can also follow along live the Special Chiefs Assembly in Calgary. We're streaming that on our website, aptnnews.ca, and on our APTN News YouTube page. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuitch, thanks for being with us. Have a great night.